In 1899, Claire Malcolm Lintilhac was born in rural China, the daughter of a Canadian doctor. And except for World War II, she lived and worked in the country until 1950, when she finally left after the first year of communist rule. China in Another Time is Claire's own story of those dramatic and turbulent years in the country she loved.
China was home, and we never expected to leave. That was going to be home forever. But the world scene was changing.
As Claire grew up, the Chinese rebelled, first against foreigners in their land, then to overthrow their corrupt final dynasty. She saw Chinese traditions up close, including the old custom of women's foot binding.
I think it was really a repressive measure, a male repressive measure.
Claire spoke fluent Chinese, and she trained as a nurse in Shanghai. As warlords battled violently for power in the 1920s and early 30s, she traveled widely, by herself, to deliver babies and care for patients.
I called myself a tramp nurse, and I would go to any of these remote areas, travel on these boats, unafraid that there was never another nurse.
Claire was in her 30s when she finally married a British businessman in Shanghai. She survived the two horrific Japanese attacks on the city in 1932 and 1937 that truly began the Second World War. After the war, she returned to a devastated city, overrun by refugees at the edge of starvation.
Every day, the sanitation department would come around, pick up, so the paper said 600 bodies a day, and dispose of them. These were the refugees that had become beggars by now, and nobody claimed them because they didn't want the expensive funerals. They just couldn't afford it.
By now, Claire's son Philip was growing up, and the nationalists and communists were fighting each other over China's future. In 1949, she watched Mao Zedong's victorious communist troops walk into Shanghai in sneakers.
And they came paddling in on their tennis shoes. You couldn't hear them. There was no marching of soldiers' boots or anything like that.
At last, her family left for America, where Claire lived until her death in 1984. But she never stopped caring deeply about the country that for half a century had been her home and her life.
My life began in another world, and it was so different